All right, what we're going to look at is an introduction to Git. And what I'm going to be going over is not really any of the commands or anything like that. What we're going to be talking about is just the theory behind Git, because it's good to understand what Git does before you dive into it. So how about this? Let's explain this by thinking about the common problems that Git solves. So let's go into a folder here. Let's go into, yeah, this is good. Okay, so sometimes when you have a project, right, you go into a folder and say you're making a novel, because Chancer told me that a novel is a great example for this. And let's see if we can open up TextEdit, because TextEdit, obviously the most high-tech program here. Alright, so you're making a novel, and your novel starts out and you say, this is a novel. And let's just save this in our untitled folder, if we can. Don't worry, I promise I'm going to get to explaining Git, but I just think this is a really good place to start to explain the theory of Git, because it's important to understand why you need this. Alright, so it looks like it's saved. Okay, so what Git does is it's a version control system. And lots of people have they've used version control on their own without knowing it. They haven't used any sort of special program, but they've done things like, okay, well, we've started writing our novel, and then a little while later we say, okay, I'm done with my novel. This is the final draft. And we don't want to write over this one because we made some changes. So what we're going to do is, oh, I guess we did write over it. I don't really know how TextEdit works, but what we do is, that's interesting. What we do is we save something, and we would save it like something named final, because this is our final draft, and we're going to put it in there with our other file, which was a draft. All right, at the draft of our novel. And so now what we've done is we've used version control, because we have two different versions in our folder here, and we want to be able to keep track of the changes between them. Now when you're coding, this is especially important, because you're going to be making lots of changes in lots of different files, and you want to be able to see specifically how those files differ from one another. So you can see, okay, I added 20 lines of code here, I removed 10 lines of code here. You'll be able to tell exactly what you or somebody else did. Okay, so the way that Git handles this problem is, instead of having lots of different files, it lets you keep just one folder, one project folder, and it saves lots of versions. And you can kind of think of this like a time capsule. Now, a couple years ago, Mac came out with this time capsule idea, which was you can see your current state of your folders, and you can see how all of your files and all your folders looked 1 hour ago, and you can see how they looked 2 hours ago. But on the surface, when you exit the time capsule, all you really see is your current files, because that's all you really want to see and all you really want to use is the current stuff. But just in case you need to go back and see the different, all that stuff kind of lies hidden behind your folder. All right, so let's just talk about, yeah, so now that we've explained that, what we really need to look at is the terminal, just to go over some very basic things, and that is probably the workflow, and the second thing is branches. Now, the workflow of Git is like this. Let's see if we can go into one of our existing projects. So there's a little something to go off of. So we're just going to get into the campers of FCC, because that is a great place to be. All right. And your terminal might not look like mine, but that's just fine. You're going to be able to access all the information that I'm accessing here with the same Git commands that I'll show in the next video. But I've just made it a little bit easier for myself. So the very first thing to talk about is the workflow. Now, when you make changes to a file, they're not going to save automatically. And the reason for that is because you want to make your saves in logical spots. You want to say, okay, now that I've completed a feature, now that I've added a chapter to my novel, I want to make a commit. And a commit is what is sort of a save, basically. But what a commit means is that you're saving a snapshot of your program to the timeline that is your version control. All right. So what you have to do is once you make changes, you save them in your files. And so we'll just open this up. Once you make changes, you save them in your files. And it's on the wrong screen, of course. I'll just drag that over there. Okay, so what you're going to do is, say you were in here, and you made some changes, and you just said, hello world. That's a great change to make. Say hi to the world. So there's hello world, and that's a change we've made. You can see I've saved it because there is that little dot up here, and then I click save, and it's gone. Okay, so it's saved. Now when we go over here, you'll see that this is yellow, but you don't have that, so it's just important to say there has been a save, but Git has not saved our changes. Git has not made any of the changes that we saved here into a snapshot. Okay, so what we have to do to make them into the commit is we have to tell Git, okay, these are the files I want to add. All right, so you say, out of all the changes that I made, I changed 7 files. I want to add 5 of them, and I want to commit those 5 to the snapshot. All right, so that's the workflow. Basically, in short, you make changes, you save them, and then when you've reached a logical stopping point, like you've done a chapter in your novel, or you've finished maybe a part of your application in JavaScript, what you do is you add those to the stage. And the stage is where they move on, is where your changes will stay until they go on to the commit. So you save, you stage, and then you commit. That's the basics of what I would call the workflow of Git. It just describes how you use Git to keep track of your versions. The second thing is a little easier to understand. It's branches. And branches are, it's a way to protect the content that you've already made and try out new things. So for example, this part right here that says Content API, that's actually a branch. Now, let me just start off by saying, when you make a Git program, or you start your Git file system, it almost always starts with a master branch. And a master branch conventionally is where you want to keep all the code that's really good. This is the code that you're going to be showing to the world. It's the code that's going to be on your website. It's the code that's going to deploy your website. So you don't want it to have any bugs. And it's especially true that you don't want to try anything new on this master branch. It's great to try things new and try new things and add new features, but if we did it on the master branch and there was some problem and we had made a commit, then we would be in trouble because we don't want to alter our master branch. So the thing that we do is we make a new branch. What we do is we take our entire program and we copy it, and instead of having to duplicate all the files and put it in a new folder, Git allows us to make those small changes in something called a branch. So what we can do is we can make a whole new feature. In this case, the feature is called the Content API. I've named the branch after the feature because that's a pretty good convention. So I know that everything that I'm going to be changing is going to be related to the Content API. So what I'll do is I'll try and make it work. I'll try and get it as best as it can be. And then I'm going to take this branch and I'm going to merge it back into the master branch. And that's something that Git is really good at, is merging, is that you can take your master branch and you can split it off. You can start writing some code on the side, developing a new feature, making something new, trying something different, and then you say, you know what, I want this to be on my website. I think this is good. So what you do is you merge it back into your master branch, and this takes these 2 different copies of code and pushes them together in one thing that will work. Okay, it's really wonderful. So let's see. Yeah, so basically that's the very basics. And just another example of the branches, just to be sure that it's 100% in your head, is that you can think of it like, back to our novel example, you can think of it like alternative endings to the novel, right? You're making one novel, and you start writing something and you keep going and you think, I've got a great idea for how this novel could end, but it's different than what I'm writing right now. And you want to add in unicorns and puppies? Well, let yourself do it. Let yourself take a copy of your novel, and basically that means put it on a new branch, and then you make some changes, and then you think, this is a great ending. This is better than what I've got. You could merge it into the master branch. You could keep branching off of your other branch. You can make all sorts of different branches, but it's just important to know how branches work and how they merge back into each other once they've separated. Or if your feature doesn't work out, once it's split off, you can just delete that branch and it's gone. I mean, you don't have to worry about it. All right, so I think that's all we're going to cover for the basic theory of Git. And for the next video, we're just going to move into the commands that you really need to know.